I pity a country that would come up against us. The synergy with air, land, and sea forces and our ability to control the battle space and seize the high ground is devastating. All countries respect the power of the United States and they respect how dominant we are in this region. And we get better and better and better.
Tonight at 10, a rare glimpse of China's ambitious expansion in one of the world's most contested regions. We report from the South China Sea, where the Chinese are warning off anyone who comes too close to their building program.
We continue our look this morning at what China does not want you to see. The United States says the superpower is reclaiming land in the South China Sea.
The fact that we're dealing with a situation right now where the U.S., has to be much more aggressive in dealing with the Chinese government.
CNN has learned that the U.S. Navy is about to send a destroyer there. Let's go to
one myth I think really that needs to be dispelled was that somehow China's aiming to replace America and gonna run the world. It's not. Well, first of all, the Chinese are not that stupid. The West, with its Christian roots, are about converting other people into their beliefs. The Chinese are not about that. It's just I'm not degrading the Western culture. I'm just pointing out the inherent nature, the DNAs of two different cultures. The Chinese 2,000 years ago built the Great Wall to keep the barbarians out, not to invade them.
The United States will play a larger and long-term role in shaping this region and its future. I have directed my national security team to make our presence and mission in the Asia-Pacific a top priority.
In one sense, is the US already at war with China?
Yes, on the ground and in the air. The winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, President Barack Obama, has committed to trillions of dollars to our nuclear arsenal. He's committing trillions of future dollars to war in space. And we need an enemy for all this money, and China's the perfect enemy.
The United States is the world's biggest military power, with bases and missiles and ships covering every continent, every ocean. China is a threat to this dominance, says Washington. But who is the threat?
Will you ask King Judah that the United States government now wants to attempt to turn this great destructive force into something good for mankind, and that these experiments here at Bikini are the first step in that direction? 3, 2, 1, 0. Tell him that's fine. Everything being in God's hands, it must be good.
It was almost illegal for someone like me to know a Chinese for almost all of American history. The Chinese came to America to mine gold and build the railroads, and Americans decided we didn't like the competition. So in 1882, we had the Chinese Exclusion Acts, which kept the Chinese out of the United States for about 100 years. So you have the largest population in the world that can't come to the United States. So at just the point we're putting up the Statue of Liberty saying we welcome everybody, we were erecting a wall saying we welcome everybody except those Chinese.
I had arranged to see Professor Zhang Weiwei, a close aide to the late Deng Xiaoping, the man who changed China.
Deng is really extremely long-term, visionary, a leader with exceedingly long-term and strategic vision for his country, for his people. And China is still following that path. Yeah. Actually, this is really a tradition from China's long history. You look at even like Mao, he said we should, surpass UK by which year, we should surpass United States by which year. So this tradition continues to this day. Even Xi Jinping today is also doing the same. Actually, what many Chinese have problem with Western media is the stereotypes about China. If you are content with stereotypes, you miss so many things. You know, if BBC broadcasts something, they are happy to always mention this communist dictatorship, this autocracy. No, actually, with this kind of label, you know, you cannot understand this China as it is. But if you watch BBC or CNN or read Economist and try to understand China, it will be a failure. It's impossible.
Now in China, there are a lot of problems, but at the moment, the Chinese, the party state, has proven an extraordinary ability to change. I mean, I make the joke how in America, you can change political parties, but you can't change the policies. In China, you cannot change the party, but you can change policies. So in the 65 or 66 years, China is being run by one single party, yet the political changes that have taken place in China in this past 66 years have been wider and broader and greater than probably any other major country in modern memory.
This is the center of an empire that never speaks its name, whose power is represented in this extraordinary world map of American military bases. "4,000 bases in the United States, almost 1,000 bases spread across every continent."
The archipelago of empire, the bases that we have around the world hidden in plain sight, are the real territory of our empire. But at the same time, we maintain independent governments in Japan or South Korea or Germany. They don't have autonomy when it comes to foreign policy. So it's a very sophisticated and effective system whereby we pat ourselves on the back for helping to midwife democracy in Japan and Germany and South Korea and various other places, while keeping the lid on in that we don't know what these countries would do if they were fully independent. And the beauty of this system is that most people pay no attention to it at all. They think it's just a natural occurrence to have 50,000 American troops in Japan.
There's no country that has better anti-imperial cred than the United States, and we are not trying to recreate the glories of the British Empire. We're arguing that the world is round. We have a global policy, and all nations have global rights.
Twilight struggle.
Andrew Kurpenovich served on America's National Defense Panel. He's a military strategist and war planner. You've written that airstrikes and naval blockades have a role to play in punishing China. You've described the need for sea mines. You've described the need for special forces, US special forces, and missiles placed in islands. This sounds like a preparation for war.
Our first president, George Washington, said, "If you want peace, prepare for war." And essentially, what the United States is doing, again, is responding to provocative behavior on the part of China. And just as we did in the Cold War, the idea was to have a position of military strength such that your adversaries were not tempted to act in aggressive ways or try and employ coercion to get their way.
I mean, just last week, the US Navy sent a guided missile destroyer into the Spratly Islands and South China Sea. And what was different about this, I think, was that Chinese fighters scrambled. That sounds like an escalator.
Well, again, from an American perspective, the escalation was the Chinese beginning to militarize these islands in the first place, moving its military capabilities down into that region, engaging in provocative behavior against the commercial activities and military forces of other minor countries in the region that have claim to those islands. So it's a response to Chinese intimidation rather...
Excuse me, how is commerce being intimidated in the South China Sea?
There have been no military forces, no military bases there. The Chinese...
Except the United States military bases.
Not in the South China Sea, and not even in the Philippines, because the United States withdrew its forces in the Philippines.
But the United States is back in the Philippines.
The Philippines and the United States have announced 5 different locations scattered all throughout the Philippines where U.S. troops will be stationed on a rotational basis.
In 2015, the U.S. Navy rehearsed a blockade that would cut China's lifelines of oil and trade and raw materials. The danger of confrontation grows by the day. The U.S. Navy is on the doorstep of China, regardless of disputed islands, and is there with low-draft ships, planes, battle groups. It's right on the doorstep. What if Chinese ships, what if the equivalent was off California?
Well, John, we ask ourselves that question regularly, and it's important to put yourself in the other guy's shoes.
Yeah.
So, look, we don't operate in the Pacific in an effort to scare China, to contain China, to backfoot China. Our operations and our presence, first of all, is warmly welcomed by the vast majority of the coastal states. But secondly, is fully accepted by the Chinese. Time after time.
Is it fully accepted?
Yes.
My impression.
By their words. The Chinese
My impression
leaders,
is that they're scared. And this is what they're scared of. A noose of bases right around China. Missiles, bombers, drones, warships. A provocation of war.